The classroom discovery professor Zixthera adjusted her crystalline teaching apparatus as the mixed class of alien students settled into their biopods. The Advanced Warfare Studies course at the Galactic Military Academy drew cadets from across 17 different species, each eager to learn the brutal realities of interstellar conflict. Today's lesson would focus on the most feared warriors in known space: humans. "Attention, cadets," Zixthara's melodic Etherian voice carried across the chamber. "Today we examine combat footage recovered from human military archives. These recordings were obtained during our initial contact protocols 3 cycles ago." A nervous rustle passed through the students. Everyone had heard the stories. Humans were the only species to have successfully resisted the hegemony's expansion for over 200 standard years. Their reputation as unstoppable killing machines preceded them into every diplomatic meeting. Cadet Vroktesh, a towering saurian with scales that shifted color with his emotions, raised a clawed appendage. "Professor, is it true that humans feel no fear in combat?" Zixthara's ethereal form flickered with what might have been amusement. "We shall see, Cadet. Computer, display Human Combat Archive 7742 Alpha." The holographic projector hummed to life, casting 3-dimensional images into the center of the classroom. The students leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused intently on the display. The footage began with what appeared to be a human military facility. Dozens of the bipedal creatures moved with purposeful efficiency, checking strange mechanical devices and preparing for what was clearly an imminent battle. The quality was surprisingly clear, showing every detail of human physiology and behavior. "Note their calm demeanor," Zixthera observed as a human soldier checked his weapon with steady hands. "Observe how they show no external signs of the terror that would consume most species before battle." The scene shifted to show humans in what appeared to be primitive atmospheric craft soaring through clouded skies. Their vehicles seemed impossibly fragile compared to the armored vessels used by civilized species, yet the humans piloted them with reckless abandon. Suddenly, the battle erupted. Massive explosions tore through the sky as human aircraft engaged in aerial combat of breathtaking intensity. The students watched in stunned silence as humans performed maneuvers that should have liquefied their internal organs, pulling forces that would kill any other known species. "Incredible," whispered Cadet Nimara, her tentacles writhing with excitement. "Look how they throw themselves into danger without hesitation." The footage showed a human pilot's craft taking severe damage, flames engulfing the cockpit. Instead of ejecting or surrendering, the human deliberately crashed his burning vehicle into an enemy position, sacrificing himself to eliminate the threat. "By the 7 moons," breathed Vroktesh, his scales turning a deep purple of awe. "They use their own lives as weapons." Zixthara paused the recording. This self-sacrificial behavior appears frequently in human combat doctrine. They call it heroism, though xenopsychologists struggle to understand the evolutionary advantage of such behavior. The footage resumed, showing ground combat that defied all conventional military wisdom. Humans charged directly into enemy fire, using crude projectile weapons and primitive explosives. They fought in conditions that would have sent any sane species into immediate retreat, through fire, across toxic terrain, in atmospheric conditions that should have been lethal. One particularly shocking sequence showed a human soldier continuing to fight after losing a limb, using his remaining appendage to operate his weapon while advancing on enemy positions. The alien cadets sat in stunned silence, their various breathing mechanisms creating a symphony of shocked gasps. Their pain tolerance exceeds all known biological limits, Zixthera noted clinically. Observe how they function despite injuries that would incapacitate or kill members of our species. The final sequence of this particular archive showed something that would haunt the students' dreams for cycles to come. A small group of humans found themselves surrounded by overwhelming enemy forces. Rather than surrender, they made what appeared to be a pact among themselves, then proceeded to fight with such savage intensity that they carved through their attackers like a force of nature. When the recording ended, the classroom remained silent for several long moments. The students looked shell-shocked, their various alien features displaying universal expressions of disbelief and terror. "Professor," Cadet Yarek's translator barely managed to convey his species equivalent of a whisper, "how many humans died in this battle?" Zixthara consulted her data tablet. According to the archive metadata, human casualties in this engagement numbered in the thousands. And they continued fighting despite these losses? Vrokhtesh's voice cracked with incomprehension. Indeed, this appears to be standard human behavior. They call it honor and duty, concepts our xenopsychology department has yet to fully decode. Zixthara's form shimmered as she prepared to continue. What makes this even more remarkable is that this footage represents just one day of what humans call the Second Great War, a conflict that lasted over 6 of their years and involved their entire species. The implications hit the students like a physical blow, an entire species willing to fight to the death, for years, with the casual brutality they had just witnessed. No wonder the hegemony had never successfully conquered human space. Tomorrow, we will analyze human naval combat footage, Zixthara announced, as the students began to file out, their conversations hushed and fearful. I recommend you prepare yourselves mentally. The recordings become significantly more intense. As the classroom emptied, none of the alien cadets noticed the small notation at the bottom of the archive file. A notation that would have changed everything they thought they knew about humans and war. The revelation unfolds. The next day's class drew an unprecedented crowd. Word had spread throughout the academy about the shocking human combat footage, and cadets from other courses had requested permission to attend. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy as beings from across the galaxy gathered to witness more evidence of human brutality. Professor Zixthara noticed several senior instructors among the observers, including Commander Thelnos of the Strategic Planning Division. The old warrior's scarred carapace told the story of a lifetime spent studying military conflicts across known space. Yet even he seemed apprehensive about what they were about to see. "Welcome, cadets and guests," Zixthara began, her crystalline form reflecting the anxiety in the room. "Today we examine naval combat archives. I must warn you, these recordings contain displays of human aggression that surpass yesterday's material in both scale and intensity." The holographic display activated, showing what appeared to be vast human naval vessels floating on the surface of their home planet's oceans. The ships were primitive by galactic standards, constructed of basic metals and powered by chemical combustion, yet they bristled with weapons and moved with surprising grace through the water. These vessels served in what humans call their Pacific Theater, Zixthara explained. The scale of this conflict dwarfs most interplanetary wars in our historical records. The footage began peacefully enough, showing human sailors going about their duties aboard the massive ships. The aliens observed with fascination how humans organized themselves in strict hierarchical structures, working together with mechanical precision despite their obvious biological limitations. Then the battle erupted with apocalyptic fury. Explosions bloomed across the ocean as human ships engaged in combat that defied comprehension. Projectiles the size of small spacecraft screamed through the air, impacting with force that sent pillars of water and fire hundreds of meters into the sky. The humans didn't just fight, they orchestrated destruction on a scale that made the previous day's aerial combat look like a minor skirmish. "Observe their tactics," Zixthara called out over the thunderous sounds of battle. "They coordinate attacks across vast distances using primitive communication methods." One sequence showed a human ship taking direct hits that would have destroyed any vessel in the current galactic fleet. Instead of sinking immediately, the humans continued fighting while their ship listed heavily, fires raging across multiple decks. The crew worked frantically to save their vessel while simultaneously maintaining their attack on enemy positions. Cadet Yerek's translator crackled with static as he struggled to comprehend what he was seeing. They're repairing their ship while under fire. How is this possible? Human pain tolerance and stress response mechanisms operate far beyond normal biological parameters, Commander Thelnos interjected from the observers section. Our medical corps has studied this phenomenon extensively. The footage shifted to an underwater perspective, revealing human vessels submerged beneath the ocean's surface. These submarines moved like predatory creatures, stalking their prey through the depths before striking without warning. Underwater warfare, breathed Cadet Nimara, her tentacles coiling in distress. They fight in an environment that would crush most of our species' bodies. The submarine combat was particularly disturbing to the alien observers. Humans trapped in metal tubes beneath crushing water pressure, hunting each other through absolute darkness. When torpedoes struck their targets, the explosions often meant certain death for everyone aboard, yet the humans continued their underwater battles with relentless determination. One horrifying sequence showed a damaged human submarine slowly sinking into the ocean depths. Instead of panicking, the crew worked systematically to save what they could, some sacrificing their own escape opportunities to ensure their comrades might survive. The camera captured their final transmissions, messages to loved ones delivered with heartbreaking calmness as they faced certain death. "This is madness," whispered Vroktesh, his scales now a sickly yellow of fear. "They face death as if it means nothing to them." "On the contrary," Zixthera corrected, "analysis suggests death means everything to them. They simply value other things more, their companions, their mission, abstract concepts they call freedom and justice." The naval footage continued for another standard hour, showing battle after battle of escalating intensity. Humans fought in burning oil slicks, on sinking ships, in the water itself while under constant attack. They used their primitive aircraft to make suicidal attacks on enemy vessels, diving their planes directly into enemy ships in acts of deliberate self-destruction. "The kamikaze phenomenon," Commander Thelnos observed grimly. "We've documented over 4,000 instances of humans deliberately destroying themselves to damage enemy assets. No other species in galactic history has exhibited such behavior on this scale." As the session neared its end, Zixthera prepared to display what she considered the most disturbing footage yet recovered. This final sequence shows the aftermath of what humans call the Battle of Midway. Pay particular attention to their behavior following combat. The display showed the ocean littered with debris and bodies, human survivors clinging to wreckage in shark-infested waters. Instead of fighting each other for the limited rescue resources, the humans helped their wounded comrades first, often sacrificing their own chances of survival. "Even facing death, they maintain their pack bonds," noted Dr. Zilana from the Xenopsychology Department. "This level of self-sacrifice suggests either severe mental conditioning or an evolutionary adaptation we don't yet understand." One final image showed a young human sailor, badly wounded and floating alone on a piece of debris. As a rescue vessel approached, he waved them toward other survivors first, insisting they save his comrades before himself. The medics eventually had to forcibly extract him from the water. The footage ended, leaving the audience in profound silence. Even the experienced military officers seemed shaken by what they had witnessed. "These archives span just 4 years of human conflict," Zixthera announced, her voice carrying a note of something that might have been dread. "Our intelligence suggests they have been fighting wars of similar intensity for their entire recorded history. Over 6,000 years of continuous warfare. The implications settled over the room like a suffocating blanket. A species that had been perfecting the art of war for millennia, treating death as an acceptable cost of victory, fighting with technology that seemed primitive, yet proved devastatingly effective. Tomorrow, Zixthera continued, we will examine the final archive, ground combat footage from what humans call their Great War. I strongly recommend psychological preparation sessions with the Academy counselors before attending. As the shaken cadets filed out, many were already questioning whether the hegemony's standing policy of eventual human conquest was even theoretically possible. How do you defeat a species that doesn't seem to understand defeat? In the Observers section, Commander Thelnos quietly updated his threat assessment reports. The humans were far more dangerous than anyone had realized, but there was something about the footage that bothered him. Something he couldn't quite identify, a nagging feeling that they were missing something crucial about these archives. The shocking truth. The final day of the Human Warfare Seminar drew the largest audience in the Academy's history. Representatives from the Hegemony High Command attended personally, including Fleet Admiral Korthak himself. The sessions had generated reports that reached the highest levels of galactic government, causing serious reconsideration of humanity's threat level. Professor Zixthera felt the weight of attention as she prepared to display the most brutal footage in the human archives. The chamber fell silent as the holographic projector activated for the final time. Today we examine terrestrial combat from humanity's Great War, she announced, her usually melodic voice strained with anticipation. This conflict consumed their entire planet for over 4 years, involving every major human faction. The footage began in what appeared to be an alien landscape, a hellish wasteland of mud, craters, and twisted metal. Barbed wire stretched across impossible distances, and the very air seemed poisoned with chemical fog. It looked like the surface of a dead world, yet humans moved through this nightmare as if it were normal terrain. Trench warfare, Commander Thelnos whispered from his position near the front. They fought from underground fortifications, sometimes for months without significant movement. The display showed humans living in conditions that would have driven most sentient species insane. They crouched in muddy holes filled with disease, constantly under threat of death. Yet they maintained their military discipline and fighting effectiveness. Some footage showed them sharing their meager rations with wounded comrades, or risking their lives to retrieve fallen soldiers from the deadly ground between opposing forces. "Look at their faces," observed Dr. Zil Anna, her expertise in xenopsychology making her the most disturbed observer. "They show signs of severe psychological trauma, yet they continue functioning as combat units." The humans in the trenches displayed 1,000-yard stares and obvious symptoms of what their species called shell shock, yet they still responded to orders, still fought with lethal efficiency when called upon. They had somehow adapted to exist in conditions that should have broken their minds completely. The battle sequences that followed challenged everything the galactic observers thought they knew about warfare. Humans charged across open ground into machine gun fire, knowing that most of them would die before reaching enemy lines. They used poison gas that killed indiscriminately, turning their own atmosphere into a weapon. They fought hand-to-hand in confined spaces using improvised weapons, displaying a creativity in violence that was both impressive and terrifying. One particularly disturbing sequence showed what humans called going over the top, masses of soldiers climbing out of their protective trenches and advancing across open ground under withering enemy fire. The camera captured their faces as they ran toward almost certain death, and incredibly, many of them were shouting battle cries or even singing. "They sing while charging to their deaths," Fleet Admiral Korthak observed, his voice carrying the disbelief of a career military officer. "This level of morale maintenance under extreme duress suggests psychological conditioning beyond anything in our experience." The footage continued, showing humans fighting in conditions that grew progressively more horrific. They battled in ruins of their own cities, through poison gas clouds, in underground tunnels where hand-to-hand combat determined survival. They used flamethrowers that turned warfare into something resembling a hellish nightmare, yet they wielded these weapons with casual professionalism. As the session neared its end, Professor Zixathera prepared to show what she considered the most revealing footage: humans caring for their wounded while under fire, sharing food with enemies they had captured, showing mercy even in the midst of unprecedented brutality. But as she accessed the final archive, something unexpected happened. A small notation appeared on her display screen, text that had been buried in the metadata of every file they had examined. "Wait," she said, her crystalline form flickering with confusion. "There's additional information here that I hadn't noticed before." The entire chamber focused on the display as Zixathera pulled up the metadata. What she found there caused her to stagger backward in shock. This cannot be correct," she whispered. Commander Thelnos stood abruptly. "Professor, what does it say?" Zixathera's voice barely functioned as she read the notation aloud. "Archive classification, historical recreation, production company, Terrafilm Studios. Category, entertainment media. Warning, fictional content, not suitable for military analysis." The silence that followed was absolute. Every being in the chamber struggled to process what they had just heard. "Entertainment?" Dr. Zilana's voice cracked. "They create this level of violence for entertainment?" Fleet Admiral Korthak was the first to grasp the full implications. "These are not military archives. These are human recreational media. They manufacture scenarios of warfare and death for their own amusement." The realization hit the assembled aliens like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been documenting their actual wars. They had been creating even more violent scenarios purely for entertainment purposes. The casual brutality they had witnessed wasn't just historical record, it was considered suitable viewing for civilian populations. "If this is their entertainment," Commander Thelnos said slowly, "what must their actual warfare be like?" Cadet Vroktesh, who had attended all 3 sessions, spoke for the first time in hours. "Professor, do we have any archives of real human combat?" Zixathera checked her files with trembling appendages. "No," she replied quietly. "Humans have never provided actual military footage. They consider such information classified above our clearance level." The implication was staggering. If humans created this level of violence and sacrifice for entertainment, their real military capabilities were beyond anything the gathered aliens could imagine. They had been analyzing fiction and concluding that humans were the most dangerous species in known space, and they were probably right. Fleet Admiral Korthak stood to address the assembly. "This briefing is now classified at the highest level. All analysis of human military capabilities is hereby upgraded to Priority Alpha." As the shaken audience filed out, the conversations were hushed and fearful. They had spent 3 days watching what they believed was evidence of human military doctrine, only to discover they had been analyzing human entertainment. Later that evening, as Professor Zixathera reviewed her notes, she made one final discovery that chilled her to her crystalline core. Hidden in the entertainment archives was a small commercial advertisement, a preview for an upcoming human film about space warfare. The preview showed humans fighting alien invaders with technology that matched current galactic standards. The humans in this fictional scenario didn't just resist the alien invasion. They won decisively, using tactics and weapons that the professor recognized as theoretically possible but practically impossible to implement. Unless, of course, you were human. She deleted the file immediately, deciding that some entertainment was too dangerous for even academic study. But the damage was done. The hegemony now understood that humanity's reputation as unstoppable warriors wasn't based on their actual military might. It was based on their recreational fantasies. And if their fantasies were this terrifying, their reality was beyond calculation. The official recommendation went out the following day. Humanity was to be classified as a Level 9 existential threat, the highest rating in hegemony history, not because of their military power, but because of their imagination. Any species that could dream up such violence for fun was not to be underestimated under any circumstances.